All right, Noah Kagan, we got things to work finally. This was an hour and 15 minutes of trying to get this to work. So to start off, I want to ask you the most important question you've ever been asked on a podcast. And I'm actually really curious to know this. The question is, what is your favorite Taco Deli taco?
Oh, dude, Cowboy, without a doubt.
Dude, that's my favorite is the Cowboy.
Cowboy, it's a game changer. I just had tacos for lunch, so I'm having a little caffeine, my sugar-free Monster Ultra Red to overcome the taco coma.
I swear to God, I was in the store the other day, and I was like, people still drink Monster? Like, how's that company still in business?
You know, I think that's actually a very interesting point. I was talking about Groupon this morning with someone. Groupon is a $2 to $3 billion company. They're still making hundreds of millions of dollars, and I think all of us are like, oh shit, are you recording this, dude?
I'm recording, yeah.
Okay, good. I don't have to worry about the Zencastr or Be Live, whatever.
We're good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point where like Groupon, eBay's still almost a $40 million business, $40 billion company.
Kills it.
Yeah, eBay, Groupon, and we're like, oh, they're dead. I even feel that way about AppSumo sometimes, one of our companies, where it's like, yeah, I don't really hear about that. I'm like, it still does well. There's still there's an audience for people out there, and I think we discount things way too easily.
Well, I think that eBay actually got even bigger now that people realize that you can find stuff on Amazon. You can find stuff on Amazon that's cheaper and sell it on eBay. You can find stuff on eBay that's cheaper and sell it on Amazon. And so I know people that literally have products that they just cross-sell between the two. So they have zero stock, and they'll go on. They have these. My best friend does this. He has this product where he has like 40 of them. And if it's cheaper on eBay, he automatically posts it up onto Amazon. If somebody buys it from him, then he buys it from the person on eBay, and they directly ship it to the person who bought on Amazon. So he has no stock or anything from it.
That's it. I mean, yeah, arbitrage. I like it. How do we even talk about Groupon stuff?
I don't know. I have no idea. We went talking about Taco Deli. Oh, your Monster. That's what it was. Monster energy drink.
Yeah, Monster energy drink. There's all these businesses that we just discount. And I actually love businesses that people don't recognize and that they make a shit ton of money. Like, that's my favorite.
What's the top one that pops in your head?
Well, first off, I think the most successful people aren't talking about their success, right? So I always wonder the people who are sharing their stories, it's either they're the losers or they haven't really done that much and they overinflate it. But like, you know, an easy example that comes to mind is like 5 years ago, I was in New York and I was in this penthouse and I was like, this is an amazing penthouse. Like, what the hell does this guy do? Like, how did this guy get so rich? And my girlfriend at the time, I was like, yo, do you know what he did? And it's like, yeah, his dad owns a lighting store.
Lighting?
Lighting, like lights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love the unsexy.
Yeah.
Because I think we're so, and including myself at times, we're I don't know if deceived, but we're always like enamored with the sexy and the fast and the quick. But a lot of times it's like the slow and the ugly and the unpopular that is where you're actually going to make the real money. But and I've thought about this for people. Would you rather make a shit ton of money, but no one knows about it, or a lot of success, but you're not actually making that much money?
I'd probably go for a lot more money and less success. I actually thought about it. I saw a picture of Justin Bieber yesterday, and he was trying to eat, and there was like 45 girls that were just standing around him, and he couldn't even eat or walk past them without them like touching his face. And a part of me was like, man, I kind of feel sorry for that guy that he has to deal with that every single day of his life. I just prefer to kind of run under the radar, but I guess to each his own. It all depends.
Yeah,
I don't know. First, super rich and nobody knows about you, or famous and you make pretty good money? You're semi-rich. Let's put it that way.
No, you have to have the opposite otherwise to make that choice interesting.
Okay.
I think it would be like
famous and poor. Is that what you're going for?
No, I think I would go rich and unknown because then you could always get known if you really wanted that. And I think people have to ask themselves. It's something that's funny. A lot of people have been asking me more lately because I've been putting out more content. They're like, "What are you trying to do about your personal brand? What are you trying to do about your personal?" I'm like, "I'm not." Right? I'm just No, I'm not. I'm doing things that I'm curious about and I'm exploring it. Right? Like so with my podcast, Noah Kagan Presents, or with YouTube, or with OK Dork, like. I just think these are interesting people or things that I'm sharing stories of. And I would do it for free. And I actually am. I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
Like I have no coaching. I have no info product. I have no like anything around it. And I think more people should try to figure out what they would work on for free.
Well, do you think that that it's also kind of like a Gary Vaynerchuk thing where by you becoming more popular, even if you're not trying to grow your personal brand, that Sumo and AppSumo are going to get bigger because of it, because your brand is then going to be found from people who have no clue who you are before they found you?
Yeah, it's actually been interesting. If you look at it from an advertising perspective, if I run an ad to OK Dork, like my personal blog, or I run an ad to Sumo, the conversion and performance is better with OK Dork, right? And you're like, oh, that makes sense. But if I don't think enough people think about it, Where with OK Dork, they're like, it's a person. I can relate to Noah. And so I think for everyone's business out there, how can you make your business relatable? Like, so AppSumo, we have this sumo guy who like beats up people and kidnaps deals and like farts on people, and he gets you a good deal. And people can relate to that. That's something they can connect to. And I think that in more businesses that would actually help you increase your advertising, build better relationships and so forth. So with OK Dork, it's easier to get people to trust me and like me. And then if I recommend, sumo products or other ones, I think it works better than just trying to assume they'll trust our blog. Because I think a company blog, people are like, well, this company has some incentive that they're going to try to trick me on to some extent.
For sure. And I think that's actually the number one thing. When I used to sell Cutco back in the day, the very first thing that we say is, like, for all of these kids that are like 17, 18, 19 years coming in and they don't know how to sell anything, is like, just go in and make a friend. And if you make a friend with somebody, they're going to naturally trust you. And if you say, I think this is right, they're going to buy from you. And
I think that's a great way to put it.
I think most people go into it of like, how can I sell? And we'd be like, hey, how can you go in and just, you're 17 years old talking to a 45-year-old woman that has 3 kids. You literally have almost nothing in common, but try to figure out something that you have in common, become friends with them. And if they really trust you and believe that you are looking out in their best interests and you say, I think this product is good, they're more than likely to buy it from you.
I think a good tactic that I've learned for that is like, next time you go to sell someone, like if you're in sales or you're in marketing or something like that, like imagine that you can't actually ever ask them for money. Right? To your point, I think just to kind of add to it, it's like, and not plus oneing it, just plus zeroing it. It's like, yeah, so go to someone and next time you literally can't ask them for money. And it's interesting how you would change your whole pitch. You'd be like, well, actually, I don't think this is going to be good for you. And no matter what, you can't even ask for money. So if it's good for them, you would actually probably treat them even differently. Like, dude, tell me more. Yeah, we can help you. We can help you. Got to get it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that kind of takes the pressure off of the person, which then makes them change their format and the stakes get lower for them, which makes their true personality come out. Because I feel like most people go into being a salesperson. Like when I would train some people, sometimes I'd be like, all right, do your demo for me. And they'd be like, all right, so Mrs. Jones. And they get all like hyped up. And I'd be like, man, that's not you. Like just chill out, be you, and go into it. And so if you're not trying to sell them anything, I think that maybe that takes the stakes off and you can just kind of go in and be yourself in an appointment with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, when I've done sales, like I started working in sales at Macy's in bed sheets, and then I worked at Office Max in electronics.
Nice. And
so I think what I've noticed, two things that I've noticed in my career, I've been doing in career like 17, 18 years, is that when you're educating, that's the best way, right? When you're actually like, hey, I just think this might be good. It's like, let me understand what you're looking for. And yes, I think this will help, or no, I will not think this will help. And really just focus on educating versus selling someone is an impressive way of doing it. And the second thing is that what I'm noticing about experts or people who I admire their craft, like the best of the sales or the best of the writers or the best of like marketers, is that they've been doing it for a long freaking time. And we're kind of like, oh, it hasn't been done in like, I'm not a professional in like a month. Because even though I read a blog post in Tim's book or whatever it is, I expect the immediate result.
Right.
And even podcasting for you, right? Like, how long have you been doing this
now? It'll be 2 years in August, so about 18 months, more than 20 months.
Well, one, I commend you. So number one, I think most people don't stick with things long enough. I think if they don't get their result in a year, they're like, well, I'm not a millionaire in a year. Like, there's got to be an easier way. And I'm like, there's not.
Right.
And then secondly, like, I think you know this, and you could probably speak to it, is that after 2 years, how much better you were than when you started? And then in 4 years, how much better are you going to be than when you start, like where you are now?
Right. Yeah, my first episodes are terrible. They're like absolutely horrible. I don't even sound like my normal self at all. I'm completely scripted because I was so nervous. But what I think you're talking about is what I personally believe is one of the main reasons why people fail as being an entrepreneur is because they're just not patient. Like Tony Robbins has a quote that most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I think did you know this, that in 1980, the average person's attention span was 29 minutes. And then in 2016, it was 8 seconds. And so like people want like right now, because they're so used to it. I mean, do you remember there was a time when if you were like, you're spitting around with your friends, you're younger, you're like 10 years old, you're like, man, I wonder how far away the moon is from the earth. You would not be able, you'd have to go to the library. You'd have to look in an encyclopedia. You'd have to hope that they had like the M so you could look up the moon. And if they didn't have it, you'd be like, oh, I guess we'll never know. Right now you can just literally talk to my phone and it pops right up. So I think that most people have this like, have to have it right now. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people fail is because they say, oh, my company's not making money in 3 months or whatever it might be. And this must not be the right thing. I need to try something else.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I was talking with the guy who started a business and it worked, and then it wasn't working well enough in 16 days, so he started another one, and then in 2 weeks it wasn't working enough, so he started another one.
Right.
And I think it relates to everything in our generation. Like we are and everyone knows this, so like we've heard the temporary generation. I call it temporary generation, or the Airbnb generation, where everything is like, we don't have to own it, and it's whenever we want it.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, the counterintuitive part of that, or the way that you actually get ahead in this generation, is that you just focus a little bit longer than everyone else.
Yeah.
So if you can stick with something for an hour, if you can actually listen to a whole episode of something, if you can actually work on something hard for a week or for a month or for a year or for 5 years, like you will win. You will get the things you want if you can just put in that little bit much more, frankly, than everyone else.
Yeah. Or so it's sometimes just even starting. I remember seeing a interview with Jared Leto, who, I mean, he's a massive actor, but he's also like a massive musician. And he said he realized at one point in time in an interview that if he just tried, he would already be so much further ahead of most people, because most people are so caught up in their own fears or limiting beliefs or in whatever it is that's holding them back that they don't even start. And so he said, if I just start and then just don't stop, I'll eventually beat everybody. And I think that's going back to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've thought about this a lot. I was talking about it with someone yesterday. I had a contest on my podcast when I launched it. I don't know if you did a launch, but people should just launch things all the time if it works. Like I did this launch, it worked, and I was like, man, maybe I should do these every 6 months. Yeah. And so one of the things on my contest was, tell me how you can, you would promote the show. And one person, I'll fly out, all expenses paid, and we'll hang out for a day in Austin. And so he actually came out yesterday. That's but awesome. The thing that it was cool. It was actually, thank God he wasn't a weirdo. That's the worst. He didn't like cut me or anything like normal. Uh-huh. But the thing that was the most impressive or interesting for me to think about was that I call it the 1% rule. And what he did was that everyone left a comment about how they would win. And there's 655 comments. Wow. And so how did he win was because he made a video. So everyone else just left a comment, hey, I'm going to like tweet about you. Hey, I'll put you on Facebook. This guy went out and made a video about him like panhandling and eating tacos and stupid shit. Mm-hmm. But he put in that 1% little bit more effort. Mm-hmm. And that's why he won it. It cost me, I think, like $1,500 or $2,000 for all the expenses for him. Right. But it's like he got $2,000 worth of stuff just by putting a little bit more. And I think for your job applications, for your marketing, for your writing, like even this episode, I was like, if I can just put a little bit more, like come get a better microphone, get a better sound, like this, I want this to be a classic for us. I want to make it better. So I put in just a little bit more effort. And if people do that, they'll get ahead.
For sure. I completely agree. This is cool. This is literally, I have not asked you one question that I had down over here. Usually it's like we go into it and we kind of flow with it. But for you, for those of you guys that don't know, we already went on a bro date the first time we ever hung out, which was interesting because to give you background of how we met, we were at a charity event, which is a great place to meet people, because most people like to go to networking events that are free, and then they meet other people who want free stuff. But besides that, he was sitting next to me at a poker event, and I think you're completely full of BS that you had never played poker before, that you weren't good at it, because you kind of destroyed everybody, at least at that table for a little while. And so anyways, I noticed, I was thinking back and I was like, oh crap, I think this is the guy that I heard. Like, I'm not one of those people who knew who you were, but it like kind of clicked in my head when someone said your name. And I was like, oh, I think I heard you on Tim Ferriss's podcast talk about sensory deprivation tanks. Because I think he was asking about your hacks or something like that. And from there, the one thing that I did notice about you too is we're like, yeah, let's exchange phone numbers. Let's set up let's text each other, set up a time. As you go, well, why don't we just do it right now? And I was like, I love that, because most people don't ever do that. And so we set up a time. We went and did a bro date at Zero Gravity, and it was good. But for those of you guys that don't have a idea of the background of him, obviously I said in the intro, but one of the things it's interesting because I've never interviewed somebody after I've already been friends with them. And so I already knew you, and I was like, feel weird like researching one of my friends and like going back and listening to like different podcasts and all of these things. But the thing that I noticed, and the reason why I was most psyched about having you on, is because you're very intentional, I think, in everything that you do, or at least it seems like you are. And I wanted to talk about that because you got fired from Facebook, which is like your famous story of, coming from the ashes and like, making something out of it when you could have gone into deep depression. And you lost what could be $150 to $170 million. But one thing that I heard you say on one podcast that I have said, I kid you not, in the past 2 months, probably 50 times, is I want something along the lines of I won't let my happiness or my depression be left up to chance. And like I love that phrase. So can you dive into that and talk a little bit about, getting fired from Facebook, what happened, and then your mindset around that as well?
Yeah, you said I wasn't depressed. I was super depressed after Facebook.
Okay. So you were depressed. But you're not still depressed, right?
I mean, I think my concern and issue with everyone these days is I think we label anything that's hard as depressing.
Right.
And I'm like,
absolutely.
There's a difference between sad, depressing, and just hard work.
Right.
And that Facebook at that point was so much of it was literally was my identity. It was like Facebook, and then myself, and then my girlfriend, and then my family. Mm-hmm. And so, and then to have that taken away from me was a very interesting thing that I think once we get scarred sometimes, like we touch a hot stove, you're like, well, I guess don't touch hot stove again.
Right.
And so that kind of actually made me hesitant to ever want to put out more content or be myself publicly, because I felt like in Facebook world, when I was there, I was trying to get a lot of attention. And Mark's like, look, you can't have attention. It's my show.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I was always like skeptical and not skeptical, but hesitant to want to put myself out there. And I did face a dark depression. I remember actually the day I got fired, I remember exactly what happened. I went over to the Verizon store and I had to go get a new phone because they took my phone away. I had no cell phone. And then the next store I went to was a mini market, and I bought a pack of Marlboro Reds. And I went to the balcony. So I lived in a house with 6 other guys that worked there. And I went to the balcony and I just sat and smoked cigarettes and felt sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And, it was a very low time for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. So I have this thing on my phone now. It hasn't shown yet. But I have the reminder. You can set reminders like, tell your phone right now. You can try it, or anyone listening, like pause it. Hey, send me a reminder tomorrow to do this. And so I have a reminder on my phone that says it's always your responsibility. And it shows up tomorrow, and then I would say, remind me tomorrow of this. And it shows up tomorrow, and I say, remind me. And then the days that it's good, I'm like, cool. The days that it's bad, I'm like, I'm not feeling well, or things aren't the way I want them. Okay, it's my responsibility. And I think the more that we can just have that mindset, the more that we can make things the way we want them. Mm-hmm. So in terms of happiness or depression, I can even speak more recently. So, the Facebook thing didn't work out. Mm-hmm. It's my responsibility to be like, all right, well, what can I learn from this, and how can I improve?
Right.
I think most people want to blame someone else. They're like, oh, this person took my parking spot. This person did this to me. Mm-hmm. But really what you should think about is, what responsibility can I have to make my own life better? And so, like, specifically on depression or feeling sad for yourself, I have a bunch of different tactics, but I think one thing I've started doing is just trying to understand the root of where that's coming from. So here's an example. 2 weeks ago, I started taking some pills called Clomid. It's supposed to improve your testes. And I did it, and then 3 days later, I just all of a sudden was feeling shitty. And what I do every morning, I think you meditate a lot. Uh-huh. Meditating, it feels confusing to me. I call it self-diagnostic. It's self-diagnostic, mm-hmm. where I just sit down for 3 minutes every morning, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. And I try to diagnose what's going on in my body, in my life, and in myself. And I just think about myself. I'm like, well, what's going well? What's going poorly? And so while I was doing it, I'm like, man, I haven't been feeling great. What's changed that's really impacted that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I started taking those pills. Did anything else happen? No. So, okay, so maybe let's stop taking the pills and see how I feel. Mm-hmm. So I stopped taking the pills, and then 4 days later, I felt better again. I was like, oh, cool.
Right.
So I think that's one thing is, number one, if things aren't going well, understand what's changed from when it was going well. Number two, I think what's critical is that you have to figure out, how do you engineer your day to be happy? I think we let too much of it open to hope. And I fucking hate the word hope.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say with Obama, I don't know how much hope helped your life. And I don't think it's not, I don't like or hate Obama, but I just don't feel like my life was improved by hope.
Right.
I feel like my life is improved by me taking action towards things that make it better. So specifically, what I think everyone should do, and this is what I do, and it works for me. I can't tell everyone to go do it. I'm just telling you, this works for me and I recommend it. Go understand what makes a great day for yourself. So I call them a BDE. So what it makes a best day ever, right? And so think about what your best day ever looks like.
Yeah.
And it's different for every person. You wouldn't want my day because maybe you're like, oh, I fucking hate eating tacos all the time. But you know what? Frankly, it's not a brand thing. I just eat a lot of tacos.
Well, you live in Austin, man. They're the best.
It is. It's good. But so in terms of BDE, think about what elements do you want every day of your life instead of just on a Saturday, right? You're like, hey, man, for me, let's just give an example. I used to say, man, I really love reading. I always feel great, but I don't have time for it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, how can I engineer my day to have reading? Right. And then I made a list of the elements, what makes a great day. So I know that if I exercise in the day, I know if I have conversation, I know if I create content or a product, I know that if I do my sitting, mm-hmm. I know that if I do my reading, And like I have these things and then they change, right? So be open to be flexible. Like I don't, maybe I don't want to do yoga every morning and try not having it for a while. Like try the opposite of doing nothing. And you'd be like, actually, I don't miss that shit. Point being is that like you kind of keep engineering and be like, all right, let me craft every day to be amazing. And so I'm very intentional about how I want to spend my time and my week. And frankly, I think that's what helps me get a lot of stuff done. And I don't know, I feel mostly, I'd say 95% satisfied with how my life is.
Right. No, and that goes back to noticing how intentional you are with what you do, where I had an episode come out talk about boiling a frog, which you probably heard that before. The frog doesn't notice. You put it in the boiling water. If it's already boiling, it's going to jump out. But if you put it in and it's room temperature, it starts to get a little bit hotter, it's going to die because it's not going to notice that it gets hot. And
totally.
And that's kind of how people's lives are. I come from literally when I was in school, in college, I come from the place that had the #1 overdoses per capita for pills. And like, that's kind of how it is, where people do it a couple times. Like you could have let yourself continue to go down that path, not had any self-awareness and, gone into a complete depression from it. But it sounds like what you do is engineering happiness is a great way to put it. I actually love that. And the way I always talk about is waking up with intention every single day. Like you see this behind me. Like this is literally my board behind me of my morning routine. Like, so I don't miss it. And so it's like breathing exercise, meditate, read, jump in freezing cold water, and then do yoga. And it's like,
I like it.
And so it's like being intentional. So like, what's your morning routine look like? Cause I remember when we were together, you were talking about how you've meditated, but more than anything else, what you do is you want to visualize what your day is going to look like, and kind of have it go through your brain before. So tell me about that.
Well, so one other thing that I've tried, and someone else did it, and they had amazing results. So I'm excited to share with your audience. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, have you ever heard the Seinfeld calendar, where it's like each day you kind of keep doing something and you keep Xing it off so you can see the progression? Yeah. Have you heard that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He said that he would write jokes every single day, good, bad, whatever, but he would just cross them off to make sure that he got it done.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I've actually thought that people should do it with their overall feeling, which every day write like a sad face or a happy face. And literally do that for 30 days. And I think what happens is the days you're sad, you think that that's how it always has been. And it's hard for you to ever recognize that the macro level, like on a 30-day window, it's actually a lot better. So for 30 days, if you just write every day at the end of the day, how was today? Happy. How was today? Sad. How was today? Happy. And then you're like, at the end of the month, you could actually do two things. You can be like, damn, I was actually probably happier than I think. Mm-hmm. And then I would say for the next month, on the days that you're happy, try to understand what happened that day, right? Like, was it that sales were good? Was it that you got flirted on by a guy? Was it that like you went in an ice cold shower? Was it you tried something new? Right. Then you could start understanding like, man, shit, when I do this, I have a great time. So for me, like I experimented with a nothing week. Okay. I literally did nothing for a week. Like I did absolutely nothing.
And you own a company. That's the best part. That's
I
amazing.
do run a company. I mean, the people, it's not that I have these people that just work for me. They work for themselves, and I try to help them get what they want. Right. And so for me, I thought the best thing I could help them with is if I didn't do anything. And I was just like, well, if I didn't do anything, like what do I really want to do today? What is really the most important thing? Mm-hmm. And so I went camping for a day. And one day I just went bike riding. And one day I just like sat around and read. One day I think I just read. I wrote. And what I recognize is that, man, doing nothing is cool. Mm-hmm. And not for the sense of like I'm so wealthy that I don't have to work, but from the sense of like it helped me realize what's really important in what I do. So now in my calendar, I schedule Wednesdays as my nothing day, meaning when I wake up Wednesday, I do a little bit of my routine. But then I'm like, well, what do I really want to do today that I think would be so amazing? So like this last Wednesday, I just went camping. Like I went out and I went camping and mountain biking with a friend, and I talked about work a lot, and I talked about my life a lot. And I think the bigger thing I think for people that want to run businesses is that tactics, I think, has been my specialty, but I think the multiplication of tactics is strategy. And that's where, and leverage comes in when you're not working. Leverage comes in when you're taking a little bit of time off on a walk, on a yoga, on a meditation, outside of your office, and thinking, all right, man, what are my challenges? What am I trying to grow on? What are something I'm struggling with? And that's where you're going to get the bigger leverage ideas. And then you can come back in on Thursday and implement them.
For sure.
And so my nothing days have been great. I love it. Like, and I won't schedule shit. Like, you cannot meet me on a Wednesday. That's and awesome. Maybe in 6 months. So I think the bigger takeaway for people listening and what I experience is that I'm not saying that like never Wednesdays I'll do a meeting in the future. Mm-hmm. What I'll say is I'm going to do this for a while, and eventually I'll be like, well, actually it's not all of Wednesday. It's just half a Wednesday, mm-hmm. or maybe it's something else. And it's just kind of like this ongoing A/B testing of your life to figure out what gives you I don't know if it's maximum satisfaction or fulfillment, but what finds you creates your epic days.
Right. What makes you happy more than anything else?
Yeah, like fulfilled. I mean, and my morning routine, it's shifted a lot. I'll tell you what I love my morning routine. What makes me happy? I love when I don't have to think about fucking breakfast. It gives me so much goddamn anxiety sometimes because I'm like, so generally what I love is like I'll go through 4 month cycles of breakfasts. So I'll do like smoothies for 4 months and then oatmeal for 4 months and then egg whites for 4 months, kind of depending on the season. I love reading in the morning. So if I can wake up and just like read like a fiction or nonfiction book, like I'm fucking stoked. I've been trying doing a little bit of like my day vision where I just think about what would make today epic. And I have like have you seen these like white light shit? You can buy them on Amazon for like $50. It's like,
blue light?
I have a white light one. I don't know. I haven't tried the blue light one. It's supposed to give you
it
like,
can go in the receptors of your eyes, and so it's supposed to wake you up more.
it's like this little thing that you put to the side and it flashes like white light, and it's supposed to like make your day better, especially if you live in dark environments.
Yeah. I have a blue light. I've had it for like 2 years. And
how's that been for you?
Oh my! I kid you not. It's as crazy as it sounds. It's actually been amazing because I was at Dave Shapiro. I was at Dave Shapiro's house, and his mom was there. Actually, it was when we were roommates a couple years ago, and his mom was there, and his mom's a nurse, and I was like, man, I'm just so like down whenever the winter comes along, and it's you don't see the sun for a while, and she's like, oh, you probably have SADS, and I'm like, well, I'm not really sad, and she's like, no, it's SAD, seasonal affectiveness disorder is what it's called. And some people, if you don't get the receptors in the receptors in your eyes do not get the blue from the actual sky, what happens is your brain doesn't stop releasing melatonin, and so you're tired throughout the rest of the day, and then it doesn't produce serotonin and dopamine as well as it's supposed to. So you're actually legitimately, and I come from Florida where it's like always sunny, and so that's what I'm used to, and I come here, never had any winters, any of those things. I bought it, and if I put it over to the side, like I feel, no joke, great. And before I bought it, looked on Amazon, looked at all of the reviews, and I was like, I want to see what these reviews look like because it sounds like it's a bunch of BS. There's like 800 reviews for this thing, and said, people that have like problems with their circadian cycles or people who are insomniacs and all of those things, it helps them throughout each day. And that's one thing that helps me. And the other thing that helps me as well is if the sun is out and I'm at home in the morning, is I will take my shirt off and go outside. And I got this, actually, Tim Ferriss had it in a podcast with Rick Rubin. And Rick Rubin said that he was a night owl, and the only way he got himself to fix this is a sleep doctor told him to go outside naked every single morning and let the sun get on your skin, because you actually have photoreceptors in your skin, which will tell your body to stop making melatonin.
I mean, I think we could make up any type of scientific.
Go out on your balcony from now on and get naked, overlooking the Trader Joe's, and just do it.
I read this research study from Norway where if you put your dick in a cup of ice, it actually is supposed to extend your life by 10 years. Have you read that study?
No, what?
No. I think that the problem that I've noticed is that there's all these different claims, right? Like Rick Rubin does that. Someone says there's a study or research around this. Like you can make up fake research studies, but I think the bigger concept that at least I've taken away, and I would think, the listeners and possibly yourself, Rob,
right.
You and listener, not just possibly you, is that no matter what I recommend or you recommend, go try it out.
For sure.
And then see what stuff makes a difference for you and see what stuff doesn't. I don't believe, it's not that I don't want to believe everyone, but I just try for myself and see what I really like doing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, like this actually does work and I'll do more of it and this doesn't.
Right.
One thing I think people don't, probably taking a step back from morning routine, I don't think what people have actually spent even enough time on is actually optimizing their sleep and specifically their bedding.
Yeah.
I worked in Macy's in bed sheets, so I've obviously, it's like my lifelong thing,
so talk
I guess.
About this, because I heard you talk about this in other podcasts, and I was like, it's funny because my girlfriend and I are moving to Italy in 2 months, and so we have 2 guest rooms, and then we have our room as well, and we're like, man, we're waking up with back pain every single day in our bed. We're like, well, screw it, let's just switch to one of the other beds and see if we get better sleep, and we've noticed it. And then I listened to this podcast from you. I think it was Tim Ferriss's that you were on, and I was like, this is actually super interesting. So talk about bedding, because literally, if you're waking up with back pain or you're sore or you're not feeling good in the morning, you're spending 8 hours on that thing. That's, a third of your day every single day. You might as well spend a lot of money on getting the right one.
Well, so part one where we were talking about the morning routine. So, I mean, that's mine, right? I wake up. I have my phone in a separate room. I don't want to I removed all my social apps because, like, I used to wake up and I would walk over, get my Instagram in 15 minutes a day, and I'd be like, in the morning and I'd be like, what did I just get out of that?
Right.
So I've actually removed all social apps from my phone and I've replaced it with like brain thinking apps, or frankly, it just makes me be present and talk to people and actually be more productive than just like consuming garbage, frankly.
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out. And so from there, it's like, the reading, the sitting, and then just experimenting with things. You're like, I like doing chess in the morning. So I like have my chess games. Yeah. I just find it fun. It kind of gets me excited. Like, and we can go back to the betting, but I think the thing is like, a house is built on a foundation. A day is started in the morning. How do you set the foundation for the rest of the day? It's something I know you talk about, Rob. And so, experiment with your own morning and figure out what kind of combination of things really sets you up and be like, man, I'm so fucking pumped for today.
Yeah.
So like one thing I started doing recently is note cards. And you have your own system, but my system that I found is that at night, I would get anxiety sometimes in the morning because I'd wake up and I'd be like, I have nothing to do today. But what I found is if I took, and I hate, what's funny? I always heard people say it and I never did it. And sometimes it just takes either hearing it from us or you try it yourself. But what I recommend everyone to do is just take a note card and at night just write the 3 things you want to do the next day. And I found I woke up in the morning and I just was like, it was like, Noah, here is your to-do list. Or if like you're a soldier, it's like, Noah, here are your three commands, go execute. And I was like, yes, sir.
Right.
And I found just doing that actually relieved me a lot in the morning. It made me feel like kind of more excited and happy to go about my day. So the point being is like try out different things and then figure out what works for you.
For sure.
And then prefacing that to your bed thing, I just realized I was like, man, the way I think about it is like, what is this top of the funnel? I think I've mentioned that you've probably heard me talk about this before, but I just think like, okay, I'm on my computer all day. I'm on my bed a lot of the day. I'm on my phone a lot of the day. Go and spend within whatever you can to get the best. Because that sets up everything else. Like if you have great sleep, best day. You have a great computer, best work. You have a good phone, you can best, look at Instagram. What the fuck you doing it all day? Hopefully you're being productive with it.
Right.
But I realize that. So like on those things, like there really shouldn't be a budget. So I've gone and bought 4 different types of mattresses. I've tried countless sheets, countless duvets, countless pillows. Yeah. I've actually tested my lighting. And then people ask, well, how do I know if it's working? Right? Like, oh, I bought all this shit. No, and like, it doesn't even have to be expensive. I'm actually using my mattress that I use is the fucking Chinese knockoff on Amazon. It's $350.
I need to check that one out.
Yeah, I'll get you the link, dude.
Okay.
It's $350, $400, and that's actually the one I found to be the best. And I put a mattress cover on top, a mattress topper, and I use JCPenney sheets. And I found this duvet on Amazon and comforter on Amazon. I believe that both are good. And maybe in the show notes you can link to it if you want.
For sure.
But how you know it's working is how you feel in the morning. And so I don't actually ever wake up feeling like,
Yeah.
Like maybe 1 out of like 30 days, possibly. And that could be because of a hangover, which is why I'm not even drinking as much these days. But the point being is that like, notice how you feel in the morning. And if it's like a consistent thing, try to change one thing at a time until you get the bedding that you're like, man, I'm fucking ready for the day.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, that was a big thing, like kind of a big realization for me. Once doing it on my bed, then I'm like, how do I do this on all aspects of my life?
That's awesome. So bed, and then what else?
A computer, dude, especially if you're a knowledge, I don't know, we call them knowledge workers anymore. That's from the 90s, I guess, my era.
Knowledge workers?
That's what they used to fucking call them, dude.
It sounds like a Jehovah's Witness or something. Like
it is.
Knowledge worker come and deliver the word to you.
If you work on a computer for the majority of your day, like it's like being a sports car driver and having an okay car. Like you can't be a great sports driver without a great car.
Yeah. And
it's the same thing for a professional worker. Like if you're working on the internet, like get the best damn car out there so you can win the races. It's the same with like Tiger Woods. Like as gifted as he could be, if he had a shitty club, right, there's no way he's going to win, or whoever the best golfer is now.
Right.
So on the literally like there's no limit to how much I would spend if there's a faster computer out there.
So interesting because I listened to the podcast that you were on with Tim Ferriss like years ago when it first came out, 2 years ago, whatever. And yesterday was the first time I listened to it since then. And I cannot tell you, it was the craziest thing because I was like, holy crap. I didn't realize how much stuff I took from that interview and legitimately implemented in my life. Like number one, and it reminded me because you said, there's a couple things you've brought up since we've been talking. The first thing is the get a good computer. And one thing I did immediately was I upgraded my trackpad to go faster.
Oh, you got to make the trackpad faster, dude.
And I didn't realize that I got it from the interview with you. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That's cool. You want another one? Oh, is there more?
Oh, dude, there's so many more. Taking my phone and putting it in another room so that I have to get up to go and actually do it. I think that you had said that you put it in the other room or you put it away so you can't.
I have it in a different room.
Because I know for me, man, like if it's next to the bed, I'll sleep for 13 hours if I can. Like I'm just one
And
of
then
those
you just
people.
wake up and you look at the phone and you start fucking zooming and flipping
Right.
things out.
And then there's another thing. And then I don't keep my phone on. I don't put my phone on until 8 a.m. I usually wake up at 6:30, something like that. It's on airplane mode the entire time. And so the entire morning is like 100% me time.
Ooh, I like that airplane mode during the morning. That's good.
Yeah. And people are like, well, what if there's an emergency? I'm like, well,
There's
it's been like
they'll
2
find
years.
you.
Yeah, they'll
They'll
figure out a
they'll
way to get a hold of you.
There's a few other things. I like it. It's always interesting to it's like we evolve as humans and some things like stay the same. Like to me, I work on a computer, so I literally I have like a computer at home and at the office because I'm like I don't even want to travel with it. It's like I guess a more I don't know if it's advanced thing. I just like I want to have my systems optimized so I don't have to worry about if wherever I am I'll have a computer available. Two things that I've been doing that have been interesting around this. Number one, on my computer, I started using this Chrome extension called BlockSite. I don't know if you use this.
No.
It is awesome. And I know as humans, we kind of need like rules. So it blocks sites during whatever times of the day you want.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like, so what I've been finding most amazing about it. So I set it up to block from like, let me double check the times. I think I blocked it in my morning productivity hour because I know I'm really productive in the morning. I block it from 8 to 12 and then from 2 to 5. And so the most interesting thing about using it is that I realized how much I'm actually mindlessly checking random shit.
For sure. Yep.
And that was actually, it's like it stops me. I literally can't do it. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I don't really want to go just dick around right now.
Right.
But I have dick around time, which is like 12 to 2 and then after 5.
Yeah. Well, they need to make that for a phone because have you ever gone any amount of time without data on your phone in the past like 5 years?
Yeah,
It's crazy because you really realize like how much of so a couple of years ago when I left the company I was at to start my business is I went and I switched off of their plan and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to switch to some cheap plan because I want to see what it's like not to have data for a while. And I didn't have data for 2 months and I realized that the first couple weeks I was like checking my phone and then I was like, oh, I can't do anything. Like I can literally only use my phone as a phone. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just put it away and I won't use it anymore. And then what happened was I got data again and I started realizing that throughout the day I felt like more scatterbrained. Like I just felt like scatterbrained is the best way of putting it. And I would pull up to a stoplight and the first thing I had to do was I had to check my phone. And I noticed that
what are we checking?
You know what I mean? But like the crazy
I just don't know what we're checking for. What are we hoping for?
I don't know. That's the crazy part. Well, I actually do know what it is. There's a crazy interview. Tom Billy, I know you're on his podcast, but he has an interview with a guy who he's a psychologist that makes things addicting. He's basically an addiction psychologist. And he worked for gaming companies and he worked for advertising companies on how to make their stuff more addictive, which ads can be addictive, as far as the way they make people think about themselves. And then games, I mean, people can play that stuff for 24 hours straight. And one thing that he said is that Facebook and Instagram, the news feed, that one feature is so addicting to people, and it's the exact same reason why slot machines are addicting, is because when you pull a slot machine and you see them roll in front of you, it's that anticipation, and as soon as it lands, you get that little drip of dopamine in your brain, and your brain becomes addicted to it. So when you're scrolling through your news feed, you're hoping that the next thing popping up is going to be something that's going to be exciting for you, and that's why it's addicting. So our brain literally wants to go and check it all of the time.
And so you noticed that when you had data and you're saying you're in the car?
Yeah. So then I noticed that I would pull over this, I'd be at a stoplight because I don't look at it when I'm driving, but I would hit it and I'd look through it real quick. And then I noticed like the next 30 seconds, like I wasn't as focused on the road just from checking my phone, not from still being on it, but just because of the fact that I had checked it. And so if there's an app developer out there, if you can make that for a phone where like my data is off between this time and this time, I think that would be amazing.
The other thing I've been experimenting with, and then like I need one thing I do a lot of time is I don't keep my battery cord with me, so that I'm like, well shit, if I don't finish it in this time, then I'm gonna be done. So a lot of times I don't carry the battery charger with me because I'm like, well, phone? For my phone, not actually my phone, for my laptop. Because like you ever go somewhere?
Really?
Yeah, because then I only have like 3 hours, and I'm like, well, if you dick around, dude, you're not gonna get your shit done, and you're not gonna have any power.
That's awesome.
But it's funny, I don't even realize I do that, but I do that. The other thing I do is on my phone, I turn off all notifications. So I don't, specifically the vibrating. So it's not about, like, people get, like, it's like, brr, brr, even phone calls. So I don't know when I get phone calls.
Yeah.
And it makes you, if you turn that stuff off, you actually realize that you don't phantom check it because you're like, well, I'm not I'm not distracted by someone else. It's me intentionally trying to do something.
Right. My girlfriend
So
hates that I keep my stuff on silent because then she can't get a hold of me.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they have to wait an extra 30 minutes for us to check it. But it's like,
Right.
I think we have to set ourselves up to be successful. And that's by removing the distractions, like the social apps or people texting you when they feel like it, so that you can focus on, Cal Newport says deep work, but whatever the hell work you want to be doing. And it's one of these things where you don't recognize how much better it is until it's gone. You're like, man, how am I getting so much more done?
Yeah.
And it's because of the absence of all the distractions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, this is the one thing I've thought about is like, think about Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and like all these services. They are built to distract you. Like, they're literally, if you go to their teams, they are optimized to be like, how do we get them to come back more often and spend more time here?
And this
is
from
it in
the
your
mouth of an insider right here, because you were number 30 employee there, so you know what's going on.
It's all these services. If you think about it, what is Facebook optimized for? Why do they not want you to click away? Why is it when you click they like want you to stay on their pages and go to the likes and all this shit? Because they want more time for more ads to make more money.
Right.
Like we'll connect you. No, they want you to spend as much time as possible. They want you to be wasting time.
Right. For sure.
So
it's an interesting thing, because I remember seeing a video not too long ago where if you remember like 5 or 6 years ago, and people were like, well, if you pay $20, Facebook is not going to be free anymore. If you pay $20 each, they're going to charge us. And there was like those petitions of like, don't make us pay for it or anything like that. And the video that came out said, the product is not Facebook. You are the product, and they're selling you to all of the advertising firms that want to get their message in front of you. And I want to talk about this. So you put a video out, and it was another thing, dude. You're like you're kind of like a Buddha. Like, you're so easy to quote because some of the stuff you say is like so good. And you said the other day, it was something about like, how can your business make money this week? And too many people are playing business. And one thing I noticed with a lot of people is that they want to always research more, or they want to get more certifications, or they need to watch more YouTube, or all of those things. And you said the words playing business, and I was like, oh my God, that's so good, because in my head, I think of like little girls playing house, or little boys playing doctor, and all playing, acting like they're someone that they're not. And so in my head, I was like, that's kind of the visualization that comes into my head. And you're kind of known as, and I'm pretty sure but from the research I've done, you seem like you're pretty damn good at getting people to start and build a business and actually do something, and you have an authority in that space. So talk to me about playing business, and I think it goes perfectly with the only having 3 hours of battery life, where it's like you have to get stuff done right now, and giving yourself a shorter time frame than what you would actually prefer.
Yeah, so let me share some stories. I think that makes it easier for people to learn it. So I was talking with this guy, Charlie, who won the contest to come hang out with me from the Noah Kagan Presents podcast. He like came and like he won. So he comes out and he's like, yeah, I got this Chrome extension I built. And it's actually a really funny Chrome extension. I think it's called like Buy Blocker. Mm-hmm. And what it does is that if you're an overspender, it hides the buy buttons on Amazon. Right, which is pretty funny, cool idea. Awesome. And I was like, dude, can I go use it? He's like, no, it's not live. And I was like, well, why is it not live? And he's like, oh, because I have to like get more feedback. And I'm like, well, what for? Well, to see if people want it. And I'm like, well, when are you going to launch? He's like, I don't know, when I get enough feedback. And I was like, well, why don't we just launch it right now and get feedback real? And he's like, really? I was like, yeah, launch it, put it out there, get people to use it. And that's how you can really grow and get a business. And so I think there's a lot of facets of it. And so he did just go do that. Mm-hmm. And so my point is not just to always just go rush and do things, but I think when we try to sit behind the computer and do the fun stuff, mm-hmm. It avoids us from doing the hard stuff, which is the stuff that matters.
For sure.
Right. So for an author, it's like, hey, I'm going to write this amazing book, my magnum opus, and then I'm going to try to go find people to read it. Yeah. And then you put the book out there and you're like, where's everyone? Yeah. And so the hard part, though, is making sure you have a book that people want to read, and then having people that you have those readers available to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think more people need to try to be spending time like, how do I know that people want it, and figure that out right away before I spend months developing it or spending time on it. Like I had another experience like this recently, 2 stories. One of them was like, I built this recruiting software, and I needed recruiting help with sumo.com and appsumo.com. And I was like, all right, I'll build recruiting software for ourselves. So I started building it, and I got it, and I went out to someone. I was like, hey, do you want to just buy it and use it? And they're like, well, come do a demo, and because we want to see it in person. And I was like, I don't want to go to a demo. Let me just go back and build more features. Yeah. Let me just go do more features. And it was a good reminder. I was like, oh, this is what I want to avoid. Yeah. Right? I want to avoid spending another month doing features to go back to them, and they'll say, well, yeah, come do the demo.
Right.
And beyond that, whether I want to pursue that project or not, I think the bigger reminder for me was like, you have to go out and not waste time and money, because that is the most valuable asset you have. Like every single person, including myself, including Rob, including every single listener up in their earlobes, has the same exact amount of time. So what is the difference between them and the people who are getting what they want or accomplishing the things that they want? Right? They're using their time more efficiently. And so the way you can use your time more efficiently is that as you're working and starting a business, limiting the time and money you're spending to see if it's something people want. Because I've spent literally a year of my life on projects that I will never get back, and and that money is gone too, the money I had to spend on that project. And so I've gotten to a point where whenever I'm starting a new business or advising people to new business, number one, they have to fuck up themselves. Meaning, I've told someone this. I was like, look, you get only a weekend, no more than a weekend, 2 days, find 3 customers. And they're like, nah, man, I've got to really build more shit. And they came back to me a month later, and I was like, what happened? They're like, oh yeah, I had to close the project down because no one wanted it. And I was like, all right. So number one, is there something you can learn from it? And number two, it wasn't I told you so. I don't care about that. I want people to get the results. And you could get to the same destination driving a different way. My point, though, is like, why not drive the most efficient route, which is don't spend a lot of money, don't spend a lot of time. And we can go through examples of this. And I've done a few that have worked. But could you have just found out really quickly? And, for one that has worked recently, I thought, all right, let me start a gum company. Because people were like, gum. I chew a lot of gum. Like I actually have a juicy fruit Starburst right here. So I was like, well, why aren't there more flavors? And why isn't there like a good tasting caffeinated gum? So you wake up in the morning and you have a coffee caffeinated gum. And I was like, I wonder if people will buy it. So what do most people do around that? Like, I think the standard thing is like, well, I got to buy a domain. And then I've got to go find a formula. And then I've got to go find a commercial kitchen. Start a Facebook page. And then maybe I got to get the hashtag for the Twitter and the Instagram.
Right.
I need to get Snapchat set up.
Trademark the name.
Trademark. Yeah, dude. I've got to play business, be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And I've done that stuff in the past. I'm not trying to act like I'm better than it. I've just done it, and I know it doesn't work. Yeah. It might work, and it can work, but I don't think that's the way you should do it. And so so that's what people do. And then 5 months later, they put it out, and they're like, well, I have no customers. How am I going to get people to buy it? The hard part. Right. So I'm like, why don't you just reverse that equation? Let me sell the gum, see if anybody will buy it, and then I'll go figure out how to make it. It's a lot easier to actually... let me give a simple example of that. It's a lot easier to convince someone to join my company if I have a company that's working.
For sure.
It's a different thing to be like, hey, you should come be my developer, or hey, you should come be my sales or marketer. What is it? Well, I'm going to do this idea. I think it'll work. They're like, okay. It's so much easier if you're like, hey, I've got like AppSumo. Hey, this is working. Come be my like CTO. And that's what Chad did because I had something working. So with the gum thing, I like went out and I was like, hey, people, give me money. And I went to friends. I literally just went and texted. So people are like, well, I posted on Facebook and no one responded. And I'm like, yeah, because you're being like a reactive wussy. Right. You're being a wussy. You're being like scared. And so 2 things. One, you got to go practice failing and asking for things. So I always recommend the coffee challenge, which is... I had
this down. I love this. I recommended this. I tell the story, and I'm going to tell you how awesome this is that I recommended this to my group coaching.
Oh, dude, I love it. I mean, I actually keep expanding the coffee challenge to different tactics. And I still get you have to get afraid, right? Because business is very simple. Business is, I am asking you for money in exchange for something. That is the essence of business. If you break everything down, it's like, I am asking you for this service or food or product or whatever in exchange for money that I've had to earn.
Right. So tell us what the coffee challenge is. Explain that.
Yeah, so I created monthly 1K, which, people can buy or not. I don't care. But it was like, it's how I've started businesses. And so I was in a coffee shop when I was documenting how I start businesses. And I was like, you know what? You got to get over you have to overcome fear of failure and fear of asking. So I went up at the coffee store and I was like, hey, can I have 10% off? And it was hard for me. It doesn't get easier. It just stays the same. Right. And hopefully it gets easier over time. But they're like, no. And I was like, oh, this is good. I got rejected. And guess what? I'm okay. Right. And then so in the course, I came up, I was like, oh, this coffee challenge. We should have challenges for you. You get you practice rejection so that you can overcome and realize it's not that bad. Right. And that is how you persist in business. Like my buddy JR is starting a film business in Austin where he's filming restaurants. And he got his first rejection yesterday. And I actually want to celebrate that. Yeah. I'm like, you are on the beginning of success. Yeah. Like the beginning of success is rejection. Now keep going, and that is what will separate you. That's awesome. Your differentiator will be the persistence.
So let me tell you the story real quick. So I have I have Julie who's in my group coaching, and this was like 6 months ago. And I was like, just do it. Just go somewhere and ask for it for coffee. And she actually didn't ask for it for coffee. She asked for it when she was buying a purse. It was like
Good.
a $600 purse, and if I'm not mistaken, it was either, I know for sure it was over 20% off, or I think it was 30% off, which means she saved $180 on her purse because she just asked for a 30% discount.
Dude, I love it. Well, can I highlight something there?
Yeah.
So number one, the coffee challenge is you just go anywhere. A coffee shop is easy because you do that regularly, and you ask for 10% off.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't tell you what you're going to learn. You have to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the foundation of business. But just as a high level thing, whenever you're spending over, let's say, $1,000, always ask for a discount.
For sure.
I was talking to the founder of Alinea, which is the number one restaurant in the world. And he was telling me the story. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, then I asked the guy for 30% off. And I said to him, I'm like, dude, aren't you already rich? Like, why are you asking for 30% off? And he's like, this is why I'm rich. And I was like, fuck yeah.
Sure.
Well, like, so anytime I book an Airbnb, I ask for a discount.
Oh, man.
I
just literally booked like 1 month over in Rome. I need to go back and see if I can get a discount.
Everything is negotiable. Everything has a price,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's something that, like, the best deals are not on the market. That's a whole nother story. We won't get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But with you should always ask for a discount because there's no cost. It's free.
Right.
And then you'll actually be surprised. Like, if anything, there's no downside and only upside. So anyways, coming back to the business, like, so I started Sumo Gum, asked people via text. You didn't do reactive stuff. Some people said no, and I said, well, why not? They're like, well, I don't chew gum, or I don't drink coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So then what you do is you say, well, do you know one person who drinks coffee? Make it a very specific. So out of every rejection, you get a free referral.
Right.
That's the way I've done it.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 or 4 people, like Chad, my buddy Jude, and I think I'm not sure who the third one was. And Ian. And I sold it to him. And then I found this girl, a friend of mine, who likes to cook. And I was like, can you just figure out how to make coffee gum?
Just because she knows how to cook.
I don't know. Dude, it's a gum, and take gum and you put some coffee in it. And so she figured it out. She actually ended up.
Figured it out?
She did. She ended up buying. There's a gum kit on Amazon by this Glee gum company.
Oh, wow.
So you can search it, Glee gum coffee kit. And so she did that, mixed it with caffeine powder and instant coffee.
Wow.
And I started making Sumo Gum. And it's not a business I want to pursue full time, but I like the practice of starting something. So I started that literally in less than a week, and I had a gum business.
That's awesome.
And so I think that's the opposite of the standard process or the standard textbook, which is like, oh, do a market research and see if people want it. And like,
yep.
I think I've just from experience have learned that other way takes a lot of time and a lot of money for uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather guarantee something will work or not. And I think this can apply to almost every aspect of your business.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the phrase ready, fire, aim?
Yeah.
That's basically what it is, where it's like you don't allow yourself to question or make decisions. It's just like put it out there and then figure it out. And I always ask the question because most people are like, oh, yeah, but I procrastinate, though. That's my main problem. Like I'm a procrastinator. And I always ask the question, I go, well, are you a procrastinator, or are you really just afraid of rejection, or you have some underlying fear and you're masking it as procrastination?
Ooh.
Because that's really the truth.
I think the thing that people kind of have to come back for is that they have to actually experience it for themselves. So I think a lot of people are going to hear this and are like, well, yeah, I still just need another few more months on my project. And at the end of the day, in 2 months when it fails or it doesn't work out that way, they'll be like, you have to try it out for yourself. Sometimes, like, I could tell you not to eat at that restaurant. Maybe you actually like the dish, or maybe you go there too and you're like, oh yeah, it did suck. I do actually believe Noah.
Yeah.
And so that's what, sometimes it takes either trying it for yourself or hearing it enough times to actually internalize it. That's why there's a big difference between a blog post and a book. A book is the same message repeated 300 times, so eventually you actually are like, oh yeah, I get this message.
That's so true. That's so true. I love that. So take me through this, because you mentioned books, and I had this down because I read every single morning as well, and I just switched to using Kindle.
Dude, Frey.
What'd you say?
I love the Kindle, man.
Okay,
I was against Kindle for a while.
Dude, so was I, but I'm moving over to, I can't bring all of my books with me, so I'm going to have to figure something else out. And I heard you say that you do a book report with each book that you read. And I was like, man,
yeah.
that's amazing. Because the reason why I like paper books is because I can pick it up and I can thumb through it and I can look at all of the underlines and highlights and notes that I made. But if I'm doing Kindle, it's a lot different than doing it. So give me an idea of what your, number one, why you do book reports, because some people don't even read in the first place, let alone go and do a book report after, and the structure of it and how you actually do that.
So I don't do it for anyone else, right? But what I realized is that I was reading books, and I want to remember. I generally think with books you can remember one thing. Mm-hmm. You generally have one takeaway, and my book reading has evolved over time. So I found, like, I'm reading these books and I'm like, I want to remember it. So I started just bunny earing the pages. I know what they call them, bunny ears on the corner of the pages. And at the end of them, I was like, yeah, I should just write down like the main quotes or things that I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I just started doing. And I actually don't reread them ever.
Really?
But the idea of like highlighting it, writing it down afterwards actually just helps me internalize it better.
Well, it's supposedly your recall rate is like 5 to 10 times better if you write it down versus
Yes.
just hearing it or seeing it.
I've actually heard a sales marketer do that to me once. He's like, all right, I think it was Tony Robbins actually.
Really?
He was like, hey guys, if you listen to me, you'll remember half of it. If you write down what I'm saying you'll remember 75% of it. And I was like, okay, I'll write this down. So everyone listening, as we're talking about all this stuff, we'll maybe do write it down and see if you remember a lot more of it. But yeah, I started doing these book reports, and it was just kind of a great way to internalize that information versus kind of let it go in the ether. And also, like, I can share it with people. So a lot of times I'm like, have you read that book? Like, no. I'm like, well, I actually wrote up notes. And now I'm actually turning that into content. So it's kind of like I'm getting more multiple or more value. And I think that's actually a bigger concept. Like, how do you get multiples of value out of like an individual action and turn that into 10 actions?
It's a tough question, but I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite book ever? And then what's the best book you've read in the last 12 months?
So if people want to just see the books I read, like on my No King Presents podcast, I'm putting them out there. Mm-hmm. But I actually, on Library Things is what I use. I think people use Goodreads too. Mm-hmm. It's Library Thing. My username is OKDork. Mm-hmm. And you could just see literally every book I read. I read generally about a book like every other week, give or take. Mm-hmm. So the book, I've been like lately, I don't know, I've just got a little tired of fucking all these like nonfiction books. I was just like, I'm tired of the same advice from the same self-help. Like, here's another thought for you. Why do we need so many damn books on how to start a business? Is there not like, there's like an algebra book about how to do algebra. Right. But like there's like all these different ways of starting a business, but somehow none of them seem to like really get people. Right. Because really what you have to go do is go do it and stop reading. That's actually the secret. Right. So the books that I've read, what books have I really enjoyed? My favorite book ever, I would say, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's just the Bible. Right. That's a Bible for life. And I'm not Christian. I'm not even that religious. But that book is just like, you want to have fundamentals. Mm-hmm. That book I just think is killer. Ultimate Sales Machine is one of these books that you'll buy. You'll listen to us talk about it. You will buy it. You won't read it for 6 months. You'll read it. You'll forget that you heard about it from us. Mm-hmm. And you'll be like, dude, this book is awesome. How come I never heard of this before? Yeah. Other fiction books I've really enjoyed, Replay by Ken Grimwood, Red Rising by Pierce Brown, awesome. Ready Player One, a lot of people have read that one now. Bios, I'm trying to get more into bios. So like I read this book, Kid Stays in the Picture, about this like Hollywood producer. That's damn good. There's another Hollywood one I really liked. Let me find it.
Oh, here's another thing that I got from the podcast when you're on Tim Ferriss was The Martian.
Martian's super good, dude.
It is good. And this was before it was actually a movie too. And I was like, all right, I've been trying to get into nonfiction because all I read is, or I'm trying to get into fiction because all I read is nonfiction. And I bought that book, and then like I went back and listened to it yesterday. I was like, oh, that's why I bought the book. I had no idea. That's the reason why.
Well, it just gets, I do 1 and 1, right? So like right now I'm reading Steve Martin's biography. He's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm reading, so it's kind of more of my fun book, and then I'm reading Turn the Ship Around, which is about how a submarine captain like turned around the worst performing one into the best performing one, and that's been, so I kind of like have to have some balance. I'll do 2 other ones. I mean, these are just, I love reading. It's been like, it's like the cheapest way to like improve yourself. For sure. Or like, you know, even the cheapest way to improve yourself, fucking YouTube. My friend Neville, you know Neville from Copywriting Course, dude, this guy watches YouTube every day, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, YouTube. Dude, I don't think people think of YouTube as like the best like, you know what's number 1 above Harvard? YouTube. Yeah. Dude, I kid you not. I'm on YouTube all day long when I'm not, like, I have a routine where when I go make my eggs in the morning, I pull up YouTube and I find something that I can watch that's going to help me. And this is actually why I started doing YouTube with my podcast, was because the self-awareness of I've rarely listened to podcasts, and I own a freaking podcast with 250 episodes. And I was like, wait, so I'm not even my own target market. And I was like, so what do? I spend all of my personal growth time either reading a book or going on YouTube. And I was like, I got to start a YouTube and just start putting stuff out there. And so I completely agree with you on that, because there's so much good stuff that's actually on YouTube. This morning I was watching, because you had recommended it in a podcast after doing all my research on you. What's the boron letters guy? Gary Halbert, dude. Yeah. Gary Halbert, dude. You know who you should watch a lot of? So what I do is like, I actually got an iPad just for this, because like, if I do it on my computer, I think what's hard is that it's so easy to get distracted. Like you have the YouTube playing and then you start like, oh, look, there's porn, or, oh, I got to go do this. Or like, So I have a dedicated thing that's simple. It's like Kindle, like it's just for book, and I can't click other things. So my iPad is just YouTube. Like you can't check my email on it. There's no text messaging on it or whatever iMessage. And so yeah, Jim Rohn, dude, that guy is a baller, man. Like he's one of these people who are like, I'm like, how do not more people know about him? He's kind of like what Gary Halbert is.
Yeah, you know who Hal Elrod is?
Yeah, I just connected with him.
So,
I just starting to check his stuff out.
When I was 19, he was I paid $500 a month for him to be my like coach, and I was with him and his best friend for 2 years. And the very first book that they told me that I should read, which was the very first book I ever read outside of school, was The 5 Major Pieces to the Life Puzzle by Jim Rohn, and that was like the foundation of completely turning my life around. Was that book? So I completely agree. Jim Rohn's got amazing stuff. One thing though. Can you speed up your iPad YouTube? Because I watch YouTube at 1.5 times the speed to 2 times, so I can get an hour-long thing done in 30 minutes, but I can't do it on my iPad. Do you have a hack for that?
Well, two ways. One, I think you should unhack it. So I actually like it slower. Yeah. I think the fact that it's slower means I'm going to absorb it better. If sometimes I'm like, they're like, I'm like, what the fuck are they saying? And everyone's trying to listen to 2x speed, and like, people when I do my podcast, they're like, dude, no, they're like, Noah, you're speaking too fast. I'm like, dude, just listen better. The point though is not about speeding up and stuff. I just think people should go slower so that they can actually absorb it and even write notes out. So like, have you watched Warren Buffett's The Becoming Warren Buffett?
No.
Dude, go do that tonight or tomorrow. That's a fucking game changer. But like, I watched it
as well.
Oh my God, that one's amazing. So Becoming Warren Buffett, I actually just took notes on it. And I found that like listening to it, dedicating to it, taking notes on it. And now I'm like, oh wow, these are like really cool thoughts about like. I'll pull them up. The other thing,
what is it?
Yeah, it's a documentary on him.
Okay.
He just has so much stuff. Like he talks about compounding is an amazing thing. Talks about how he reads every single day. He says the key word for him to be successful is the word focus. It just has like insanely great stuff. And then I got from watching on YouTube. If you want to hack for it, the easiest thing you could do is that download the audio and then you could speed it up on your phone. So like YouTube, the number 2, mp3.cc. So YouTube, the number 2, then mp, the number 3.cc. You can download any video from that and then on your phone, speed it up.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something like that, like I just personally like it slower because I feel like when I, like even on my podcast, when I'm listening to Audible, like right now, I'm listening to Creativity Inc., which is a fucking amazing book, dude. I don't know if you've listened, read that one. One, I actually don't like listening to business books, I've realized. So I've had 2 realizations. Business books on audio suck for me because I don't internalize it as well because I want to take notes and I want to like process it. And for some reason, visually seeing it, I process it better.
Right.
The second thing I've learned is that like, I feel like podcasts are like an appetizer, but I really grow and learn from entrees, which are books. Like, so podcasts are this nice way to get like kind of little like tidbits and tastes of something.
Yeah.
But I feel like to really internalize and grow significantly, like podcast 20% of the time, 80%, like go get like digestible books that have been like thought through thoroughly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, all right, man, we'll be going for an hour and 5 minutes. This is awesome.
Boom.
So,
Rob Dial.
So let me ask you this. I'm gonna ask you the closing question, and I'm curious about this for you. What's the most life-changing thing that you've ever learned from a mentor? That just kind of, I mean, it doesn't have to be the most life-changing, but something that's top of your mind, the first thing that pops in where you're like, man, I can't believe I never thought of that. Or the way that they put that is amazing. Or the way that they have their outlook in life is amazing.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to think who I look to as a mentor. I'll do 3 different mentors over 3 different periods of my life to make it interesting.
I like it.
So when my Facebook boss, who was fired the first day I started, I think his advice to me is be patient. I think we're all wanting something to happen right away. And I think, 10 years ago, he's like, just be patient with it. Second mentor is when I started sumo kind of like 6-7 years ago, I met this guy, maybe around 5 years. And he was like, just do more of what's already working. So like he looked over our business and he's like, sales team is working. How come you don't have more salespeople? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, is it working? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do more of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And that was a good one. So just see what's already working in your business and just do more of that. And then lately I met this guy, Jonathan Kuhn, who runs wikibuy.com. And I think I'll tell you the one thing that he's changed my game on is that tip big. And I've been like, today I had lunch. Last night I had dinner that was a $70 dinner at Kome, the sushi place, and I tipped $30, so a 40% tip. And that tip will change that waiter's whole day.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't even notice really the bill.
Sure.
I'll see it on my credit card, I'll be like, 100, whatever.
Right.
And so I've just been like tipping really big. And I'll tell you, it's damn good karma, man. I feel fucking great.
It makes you feel, it makes you feel amazing to tip more than you should, doesn't it?
It's just, yeah. And especially at the places you frequent often, do go big there, right? Go real big, because then they'll give you even better service. I've actually just and the last message, he didn't really talk about this, but this is something that I've been on a kick. I'm calling it the 5% challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy Tynan actually influenced me. So I'd love for anyone out there to do it and let me know how it goes. So in the month of March, I've committed to giving away, and I've already done it, giving away 5% of my salary to others, right? It could be to anyone you want. And so take the 5% challenge. So for me, the 5% challenge was I gave it to services that I use for free, first off. So I gave it to Wikipedia, I gave it to NPR, and then I've given it to like other groups that I've enjoyed over the years that I've never really paid for, like My Birthright, Planned Parenthood, JCC. And so I've enjoyed them and used them, and I never paid. And then I started just paying other people and giving, like we have doormen and concierge at the building I live in. So I gave them each $100 tips. Wow. I was like, they're like, what's it for? I'm like, I don't know. I just really appreciate what you guys do. And I'll just say, it just feels damn good.
Right. And they appreciate it. They appreciate the $100 much more than you would, right?
Oh, totally, man. I mean, so awesome. If you had to give 5% of your salary, like, how would you give it away?
You know what I'd probably do? There's one place that like really sticks out in my mind to me.
Yeah.
Two places actually. Number one, the hospice that my grandfather was at last year, because it was like the most amazing experience with the most amazing people. It was awesome. Like they were just they made it so comfortable for him, and it was like a party more than it was, hey, you're about to pass away. So that would be one thing that popped in my head. And the second thing is, when I was a kid, I remember there was a point in time when my parents have just gotten divorced, and my mom and sister and we were super poor. And I remember going to like a women's shelter, and I remember I was like probably 9 or 10 years old. And I was very cognizant of what was going on. I wasn't like a naive 10-year-old of like, oh, we're just hanging out here. And we were there, and they gave me, it was one of my Christmas presents, and it was like a black, I don't know why it sticks on my head. It was a black toy truck, like remote control one. You know, the ones that had like the trigger and then you have to move the little wheel? It was one of those. And so those are the two things that pop up into my head first.
I think maybe you should consider giving it. It's not.
I'll do it.
I mean, I'm not a big tipper in general. I haven't been a big donator of charity, because I'm like, I even gave to Berkeley, which I was like, I already paid him tuition. Why should I pay him more? And I think Ricardo Semler said in Tim's interview, I thought it was really good. He's like, most of us have more than enough, and by the time we're already giving, it's too late. And I was like, that's just kind of an interesting approach to it.
For sure. It's like, real quick, before, when we were sitting next to each other and we had a conversation kind of like this when we were doing we were playing poker, and the thing that we were talking about was giving money to people. And I think we were talking about giving money to bums in general. And what I have been really big on the past 6 months is trying to just get rid of my scarcity mindset around money, because it's so ingrained in me, but it's so ingrained in most people. And I think when you can give money to somebody else, whether that's something that you want, or, physically go up and hand somebody a $5 bill and just say, you know what, who's to say what's right or wrong with it, whatever they do with it. But when you give your money away, I think there's a connection in your brain that says, I just gave money away and I still have a lot left. I still have at least enough to live. And there's a point of your brain that clicks over and says, holy crap, well, if I gave it away and I can still feed myself, maybe I have more than I need. And I think that kind of, that helps switch from scarcity to an abundance mindset.
Dude, I think that it's hard, man, especially if your parents grew up poor. Like, I grew up Jewish, which is like, our parents are always like, save everything, protect the latke.
Yeah.
And
Jewish. I love how it's like,
hashtag Jew life. I mean, I love being Jewish, but you grew up and you're influenced how your parents raised you, which I feel happy about it. But my parents are definitely, they're in a generation where it's all about like protecting and playing defense all the time. And I think like, imagine, and I'm not where I want to be, but I'm trying to get to the point where like there's always more money out there. There's more things out there. Right. So don't worry just about like collecting all of it for yourself and dying with it, because you can't take it with you.
Right. I love it. All right. So how can everybody get a hold of you? Where should they go to? Tell us about your new podcast too. Yeah,
man. So check out Noah Kagan Presents podcast. If you enjoyed conversations like this with me and Rob, I'm kind of just doing business experiment. Not just, I'm doing business experiments. And then I'm trying to promote the people and things that I just love. Right. And that's kind of what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like, I'm like, I think your story's great. Let me promote it. Or I'm working on this idea, like the 5% challenge. That'll be an episode. Or I did like the 5 a.m. challenge where I woke up at 5 for I think about a month and a half.
That's
And now
awesome.
I'm getting up at 7. And I'm like, that's a lot earlier than I was before. And so it's just been a fun outlet for me to like connect with people and share stories of things I'm excited about.
Hmm.
So Noah Kagan presents the podcast. If you're interested in growing your business or any of the tools to grow and promote your business, appsumo.com is our free newsletter of products to use. And then sumo.com is our free marketing tools to grow your email list. So either one of those, I would go check those out.
I love it. And Kagan is Kagan.
Si, senor.
If you go to mwfmotivation.com/Noah, it's already saved that spot to put you in there, so you're good on that.
Damn, dude.
And I'll offer you one challenge you should think about that I do is the do what you don't want to do challenge. So what I did for the entire month of December was wake up, and the very first thing I took a pool, put it in the backyard because it's 30, 40, maybe 50 degrees. I put a giant kiddie pool in the backyard and jumped in it every single morning for 30 days straight. And I think that if you can start your day off doing something that you really don't want to do, like I did one this morning. I still hate doing it. The rest of your day just seems to be pretty good if you can just conquer something that's that bad right away.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I'm trying to think of a challenge, something I don't want to do, and then I can do that.
That that would be good for you. Something you don't want it like if you.
I mean, the tipping one. I think part of it for me, and this is what my therapist said, and I thought it was interesting. Is sometimes I'm doing all these challenges when the actual hardest challenge is dealing with yourself. And so that's actually been something I've been reflecting on, where it's just like, all right, I think my challenge is being accepting and being happy with what is. It's not, and it's hard because I'm like, well, I want things to be better, and I want more of this, or I want less of that to some extent. But I've been really experimenting and challenging myself, like my relationships with women or my relationship with work. It's like, how do you be content in a healthy way? That it's not this always strive for more things where ultimately you're not ever satisfied. And that's something I'll tell you, I am exploring.
I love that. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. And
dude,
it was great
you
to
too.
talk
Thanks.
to you, man.
All right. Thanks, brother. Thanks for hollering.